Hi, I'm Billy of the Fuji Guys. In this video today, we're going to take a look at Fujifilm's latest firmware update version 4.0 for the X-T1 camera. Whether you own a black or a graphite silver edition, this update is going to bring some major improvements to the autofocus system and also add some new function that wasn't found before. Let's take a look at some of the new updates that this firmware has to offer. The first thing we need to do, of course, is to update the camera to the latest firmware. You need to download the firmware from our website, copy it onto the root photo of your memory card, and of course, you're going to insert the memory card into your camera. Then what you're going to do is hold down the display back button while powering the camera on, and it should allow you to bring up the firmware update screen. It's going to tell you what the body version is, and of course, what lens version you have currently with the lens that's attached. Because I have version 4 as a pre-release, it's showing that, and I'm going to see if it's going to allow me to update. I can choose the body or the lens, so I'm going to select the body. And again, because I have a pre-release, it says version 4. This is not always the case where you can update to the latest version, so I would not ever download an unofficial firmware from any other site other than Fujifilm.com, and of course the official version 4.0. So I'm going to update the camera now. It's going to say that I shouldn't turn the camera on or off. Otherwise, I may be able to lock this camera up, in which case you may have to call our service department to get the camera fixed. So it's going to take a little bit of time. This is a major update, and I'm just going to let this run for now. So the update's completed. Now all I have to do is shut off the camera, and of course, once I turn it back on, it's going to now be a new camera with the latest update. Now that the camera is updated, let's take a look at the newest autofocus options. So the default setting to control the autofocus mode is to push up on the directional pad. From there, you can choose from the single point, which was existing before, the new zone option, as well as the wide tracking option. Let's take a look at the single point. The single point now looks no different than before, but when you push it down on the directional pad to move it to different locations, you can now see that the phase detection sites are now indicated with a white plus sign versus the contrast base. So if I set it to the contrast area and I try to focus, it's not going to be as fast as if I set that to the phase detection portion. As you can see, you want to try to keep the autofocus points within the phase detection. It's going to offer you the fastest speed. Of course, nothing's changed in the ability to change the size of the zone of the autofocus points, as you can see by using the command dial. And if you want to reset the focus point to the original size, you push the focus assist button. Again, if you have it on the right-hand side and you want to bring it back to the center, you push the display back button. You're back to where you were. Now, pushing up, we can look at the zone option. This is a new option with the firmware update. And as you can see now, it has a bigger zone. It's going to look for different contrast within that scene. So if I push halfway down, as you can see, it's going to bring up multiple autofocus points and find where the areas of highest contrast. And it's quite accurate. It's much improved. Of course, you could also move the zone to different points. If you push down on the directional pad, you can move it to this area here. But again, once you move out of the phase detection area, the focusing is contrast-based detection is now being used, and it's going to be slightly slower than if you had that zone in the center. Okay, of course, you can also change the size of the zone. There's 3 different options. You have this wide zone, you have a larger square, and you have a smaller square. So depending on what you want to do, the smaller square is going to ensure that the subject maybe in a single point is properly in focus, so it's a little bit more accurate. The wide option, it's going to make it easier to do a group shot maybe, so that the subject within that area gets in focus. And of course, the other size option, of course, it's going to change the orientation to cover a little bit more, but it hits into the contrast area. So you might be a little bit slow. I would recommend just to keep it into the rectangle there. Okay. The next option is to push up and select the wide tracking. Now, the wide tracking option looks at the whole screen and looks for areas where there may be a subject moving or there's high contrast. It's going to determine that, and it's going to choose the different autofocus point. This is a useful focusing option when you're taking pictures of maybe subjects that you're not sure in which direction they're going to move, and so you want to have the wide tracking capabilities, whether it's taking pictures of kids playing soccer or football, and you want to really have the whole scene. The subject could be running within the scene, and the camera is going to track that subject within the scene. So that's nice to have. Now, of course, this function works not only in the single autofocus mode, but also the continuous autofocus, which makes it the most useful, because when you push halfway down, the camera is going to lock focus, and it's going to quickly pick up, again, areas and subjects that are moving within that scene. And then when I'm ready to take the picture, I just push the shutter button, okay? Pushing back up, I can select the zone area, and I'm going to show you how that kind of works with the continuous autofocus. So as you can see there, as I try to pan left and right, it's picking up the Fuji guy's Billy bobblehead doll. So it works quite well. It's much improved. In fact, the autofocus accuracy has been improved, and also has been improved for taking pictures in low light. So it's gone down from 2.5 EV sensitivity down to now 0.5 EV. So it's going to be better for even focusing in a lower light situation. So that's the new improvements to the autofocus on the X-T1. The update also brings a new function called eye detection, which is on top of face detection. To take a look at that, let's turn on the autofocus settings and change and enable the face detection option. Once you have it enabled, eye detection AF now is able to be turned on. And from there, you can select from auto, right eye, or left eye priority, or even turn it off. So let's show you it in auto and see how the face detection as well as the eye detection works. So if I zoom in on the subject here, it should be able to detect the eye and lock on the subject. And what's important about that, of course, is that when you have eye detection, especially when shooting with a prime lens, it's very easy to get things out of focus if face detection was the only thing that actually worked on the camera here. So as you can see, it's tracking the subject quite well. I hope the bobblehead doesn't blink there, and there you go. So I'm just going to test to see in different areas. As you can see, it does pick up the eye, and it works quite well. And it's going to ensure that when you look back at the images here, I zoom in, you can see that the eyes on the bobblehead are perfectly in focus. So this is a great feature that's added to this camera, and very useful for shooting with a prime lens. Another update to the autofocus system, of course, is the ability now to change to the macro mode automatically. So you no longer have to enable macro in order to take a close-up shot, as you can see right here. If I want to zoom out and take a shot from far away and go back in, you can see that it now focuses, and it focuses quite fast. So you don't have to enable the macro function. In fact, it's no longer an option now. So if you hold down one of the function buttons here, you can see that the macro option is no longer an option that you can select from this menu. So that is a look at the auto macro functionalities of the camera, which is going to be much better because it frees up an extra function that you can use for something else. This update also brings improvements to the autofocus system during the video mode. So when you record a movie, the autofocus system is a lot more gradual now. It doesn't hunt. And if I just zoom in a little closer to see, and I keep it very still, in the past it would kind of jump from the background to the foreground. It's now very, very stable. It doesn't actually move off and change focusing, as you can see right there. So it's a new improvement and a big improvement if you especially shoot videos with the X-T1. So let's just take a look at that video and see how that turned out. So we play back the video here, as you can see. And I keep it very still. In the past, it would kind of jump from the background to the foreground. it's now very, very stable. It doesn't actually move off and change focusing, as you can see right there. So there you go with the improvements to the autofocus on the video. Firmware 4.0 brings another addition to the way the shutter speed dial operates. In the T mode on the camera, which is the time value mode, it now unlocks all the shutter speeds. So using the front command dial, you can actually adjust the shutter speeds up to the maximum shutter speed on the camera, which is 1/4000th of a second. And if you had the electronic shutter enabled, you can also bring it all the way up to 32,000ths of a second. And the opposite is true. I can bring it down to a 30-second exposure now. So it's going to be quite useful for shooting in manual modes when you have even the vertical battery grip enabled that allows you to use the command dial now to adjust the shutter speeds instead of using your left hand to adjust the shutter dial. So that's a nice new update. On top of that, of course, if you have the camera in basically full manual control, as you can see right here, and you have the ISO dial set to auto, the exposure compensation dial will now operate. So as you can see, you can change the exposure, and what it does, it just shifts the ISO now because you have your shutter speeds locked and your aperture locked. So the only thing that now changes is the shift in the ISO via the exposure compensation dial. A nice added change to getting a little bit more hands-on with this camera, especially when you like to shoot in manual exposure mode. The last update to talk about in this video, of course, is the way it displays the grid line. So if I enable the grid line display, it's now a lot more thinner so that it doesn't get in your way when you compose your shot. So I usually have it off because it does get in my way, but now that the lines are much thinner, I might be able to use it to help me with my rule of thirds to compose a shot. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information about this and other Fujifilm products, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter @FujiGuys. Until then, I'm Billy of the Fuji Guys.